Hi everyone, it's John Kearon, Chief Juicer of Brain Juicer, and we have another Brain Juicer Bite. We're going a little bit off-piste today. Well, off-piste in the sense of away from a market research practitioner. And we're going to talk to Mike Buckley, who's actually, well, he's a writer. He's also a teacher of writing at UCLA. He's just published Miniature Men, which I noticed on Amazon was also bought by people who bought the best American short stories. So there you go, Mike. You're in good company already, especially having been nominated for the Pushcart Prize a couple of times, and you're obviously a legend in your own lunchtime when it comes to this writing. So it's great to have you. Thanks for being here. So, Mike, how on earth first of all, how did you come to this? I mean, obviously you are, writing is your thing, but tell us a little bit about what you do, and because I know you teach a course on the West Coast, which Ari, our president of Brain Juicer North America, is currently attending.
Yeah. Well, I've as far as the writing goes, I've always been a writer. I've kind of pursued it my whole life. Done many different jobs to pay the bills while I, spent night times putting novels and short story collections and whatnot together. And just maybe 3-4 years ago, started teaching it. And as far as the speculative fiction side of it, I've always been a really big fan of, sci-fi movies and books and whatnot. And just a few years ago, read a book that really sort of just, convinced me I wanted to write speculative fiction and science fiction, and I kind of built a class around that. Ari took the first science fiction class I offered at UCLA in the writers program, and he took the second one as well. And it was really cool having him in class. And it's
What was the book?
the book was Stanislaw Lem's Solaris, which also spawned a couple questionable movies, but the book itself is extraordinary, and it does kind of what speculative fiction can do better than other genre. It can kind of, tease out ideas in this really sort of compelling way, and be about action and about humanity, but also about thought and philosophy and technology. It's really fascinating potential.
Yeah. So, Mike, I mean, we've been having a look at storytelling for market research because,
Yeah.
reams and reams of data and rather turgid, tedious conclusions can do with a bit of bringing to life. What's the story that the data's telling? I suppose a rare example of this would be Freakonomics, the popular book, which I think has done a great job of telling the story that the data suggests, and it's something that we're trying to imbue, in our client directors and researchers. But I mean, where do they start? I mean, if especially if you come from a statistical science, more, kind of that background, it can be a bit daunting. So, do you have a kind of a 101, or what would be the first kind of keystone? The first steps that they might think about?
Well, that's a really interesting question, because it strikes me that the statisticians you're working with are kind of in the same position that a lot of science fiction writers are, because, when we put things on the page, we are really trying to get across these speculative ideas, and it can be easy to forget that that successful stories, are about people, and they're about people that yearn and lose and love things and desire things and reach further than their grasp, et cetera, like all these very human sort of timeless stories can be told in formats. But there's an interesting anecdote about the Battlestar Galactica. I hope I'm not embarrassing Ari by saying that he's at the end of the show, the Battlestar Galactica incarnation. He's a fan, yeah. It was on a couple of years ago, but Ronald Moore, the creator, as he's wrapping up this huge sort of involved storyline, and they're figuring out how to end this show. He walks into the writers' room, writes on the dry board, "It's the characters, stupid." His point being, the story's great, the technology's great, the robots, the space battles, it's all great, but if you don't care about the characters in a story, then you don't really have a compelling story.
Okay, and obviously trying to translate that essential truth of good storytelling into a kind of commercial world, marketing world, it doesn't feel immediately obvious because people are more interested in dollars and sales figures, etc. But presumably, from your point of view, the same rules apply. This is the human drama that we're all, participants in, and we are struck by and moved by these human dramas, even in commercial world.
Well, I think to one degree or another, the commercials that or the marketing campaigns that really stick with me have that in common with the science fiction novels that really stick with me. They're really sort of about new and strange and speculative ideas, but they're also really recognizing the ground that they share with the sort of what we could, I suppose, call the human condition or the human aspiration. There's sort of just these conditions that all people share.
Because there's a great book I read a long time ago, actually, but it really stuck with me. It's a big tome, but it's The 7 Basic Plots by Christopher Booker. And it sort of suggests that there are 7, basic stories like rags to riches, the quest, rebirth. I think I was just trying to remember the other ones, voyage and return, the hero as monster, that have played out through all kind of mythology and human kind of storytelling. Do you subscribe to that there are these themes that emerge again and again?
Sure. I mean, I think there's I forget what the line is, but it's something like there's 2 basic stories, either going on a journey or a stranger comes to town, and those 2 get kind of told over again and again. But I think for me the way plots work may be similar to the way, at least as a viewer, really successful marketing campaigns work. They sort of work on this. It's this sort of great unknown within us, right? I don't want to call it the unconscious, but when I sit down to write something, I'm not writing it with, my consciousness, I'm not writing it with my analytical, forward brain thinking. I'm writing it sort of from this great experiential set that I can't access any other way other than sitting down to tell a story. And I think those kind of plots emerge from that process, that sort of unconscious process, that's that kind of area where we all live in one way or another.
And in a way, that reminds me or suggests why it can be difficult to translate the world of commerce and data and statistics into a great story, because it does leave, as you say, the frontal lobes. It leaves the rational and the analytical and moves into a sort of, older, emotional, intuitive brain. And I suppose people, maybe they fear, I certainly have seen it, people fear that sort of approach to the serious business of business. And yet that's what moves us, even in business, I think.
Even at the level of a sentence, it's true that if you foreground the actor and the verb in a sentence, people will, cognitively embrace it. To that level, I'd argue that we experience life as a story, from everywhere from the things that we buy to the things that we love and enjoy and continue to return to or hate. It's all framed in one kind of narrative or another.
Yeah, and even at a simple level, metaphor and analogy is obviously, a critical component of, to great writing and fiction and science fiction, I guess, but particularly. But how's it done in science fiction? Because you're trying to create this whole new world, and somehow it's got to be rooted somewhere, hasn't it?
Indeed, yeah, it's a good point, John. It's successful speculative fiction tends to take things that we know and kind of marry them to things that we don't know. And a lot of times, successfully, when it's done successfully, it's a very subtle process. We could take, say, for instance, what I like to call the visual echo in the way that we represent sort of impossibilities or implausibilities, things like spaceships, right? We take the kind of spaceship that we tend to see on screen, and you can very easily sort of draw that visually back to its maritime roots. Even in the word itself, you've kind of got this echo of the known concept that we have of a ship that travels across the ocean and the unknown concept that we have or the new concept that we have of a ship that travels across space. So down to the language that we have to describe the ship, the fore, the aft, the bridge, etc., to the way that it's kind of visually represented. You're tying the old concept of ship in a maritime sense to the new concept of ship in a intergalactic sense, and it's rooting the reader in. Go ahead.
So it's that it's that familiarity that we know with a twist. You take someone into the future. It's kind of everything we know by association. So start in a place where people, kind of know it's a reference point, and then, take it as far as you can stretch it without just scaring people.
Yeah, the reader, I mean, if we're talking, purely in stories, the reader has to believe there's stakes and rules in the world that you're creating for them, because if there's not, they're just not going to care. I mean, if they feel like they're reading a book in which anything can happen and there's no laws of physics and there's really no kind of bar to what could happen, then they're going to feel like it's an impossible world, and they're not going to believe that, they're not going to be able to invest in it and get that kind of reader identification that writers strive for. They're not going to believe that it's real.
Okay, and I think, for market researchers, that's actually very good advice, because it's like, how do you take the client into the possible future for this brand, but you've got to root it in reality, but then you've got to kind of create a believable future world, which is difficult. It's a real art, that, isn't it?
Indeed, yeah, it is.
Well, Mike, look, thank you. It was great. Great to chat. And with your encouragement, anyone on the West Coast, of course, should come and attend your course, so that as a researcher they can boldly go where no researcher has been before.